Hi, my name is Karina Barbosa. I am going to be presenting my Padlet for the Information 5720 assignment. So my topic is evaluating sources for use in an informative speech about a current event, and I have this specifically targeted at ninth graders. The discussion question that I want them to kind of get through is to describe a current events topic that you, the student, are interested in exploring through research. And the question being, how will you determine that the information you are using to construct your informative speech is reliable? There are a couple of different objectives that I want the students to get, so I have them listed here. So primarily, the students will be able to evaluate sources for reliability. Second, students will be able to use a variety of tools to evaluate sources for bias and accuracy. Third, students will be able to create an evaluation method for evaluating sources. And lastly, students will be able to identify common errors in reasoning. The ASASL standard for learners that this corresponds to is the following. So it would be under number 5, B3. So that would be learners gather information appropriate to the task by systematically questioning and assessing the validity and accuracy of information. So if you scroll down a little bit, these are the resources for students to be able to use, and they are all marked in green to make it even easier for them. So the first one I have is the Evaluating Sources Toolkit, which is this here. And this is a really good starting point because it has, the getting started, what does one perfect source mean, research help, and it kind of goes on into the evaluation process. So there's a video for them on the left-hand side, and it helps you kind of do the content analysis. So to start off, like who's the intended audience, what is the objective reasoning in the article or in the source, the coverage of the information, the writing style, and evaluative reviews. So the evaluative reviews, being like, are they generally positive? Is it something, contribution to the field, whatnot? The next tab has to do with evaluating sources and misinformation. So it has a couple of really great videos on here to kind of get them started on it. So there's how to spot and tag misinformation and the history of fake news. It goes on to the CRAP test, which is an acronym and really helpful. Is this source credible and valid? So the C in CRAP stands for currency, so like how recent is it? The R is reliability. A is authority, so like in other words, like who's the creator, who's the author, what authority does this person have to be speaking on this topic? And the P being purpose, point of view. And for further, they also have practice evaluating websites. So this would be a couple different websites for them to kind of figure out using like the CRAB test, using like the things that they just learned about evaluating sources to see, like, for example, the Mayan calendar, Dream Spell Journey, they can evaluate this website. Okay. The next one I have is a link from ProQuest. So it's actually a guided research worksheet from the Van Tech library, and it kind of helps them figure out whether the information chosen is reliable or not. And I have it's a link, but it shows up as a PDF here on the Padlet. So it's 10 questions, and it's all yes or no. So the more yes that you answer to a question, the more likely that the article is true. And the more no's that you answer on this, then the more likely that the article is fake. So it's a really good evaluation tool for students. There's Fact Check's Misinformation Guide. So factcheck.org is one of the most well-known evaluation sources on the web to determine whether something is true or false, especially because they partner up with Facebook all the time. But what I really wanted to show was the Misinformation Guide in particular. So this is not an exhaustive list. However, they do have everything organized in alphabetical order and provide information about, like, for example, oh, this doesn't have a disclaimer, or it's a central website, or it's a network of websites, and it tells you, like, are things on here fictional and why? Like, are the sources they get them from just not great? So that's that one. Next is going to be Media Bias Fact Check. So this one kind of evaluates not just the fact check like factcheck.org does, but also the biases and of the media sources. So it'll tell you, whether a source is left, right, or if it's meant to be satirical. So you can open this one up right here, and it'll, kind of show us how we can look through things here. And it has like a daily source bias check and just a bunch of really good information here. Similar to that one, we have the all sides media bias chart. So in addition to, showing us, whether the source is factual or if it's credible, because credibility is going to be more the media bias fact check. This one will show the different perspectives in a variety of media. And it actually has a most up-to-date chart, and it ranks most of the most popular news sources, like is it left-leaning, central, right-leaning, or right? And this would be the media bias chart right here. Right, over here on the left, we have the information evaluation fake out. So this is actually an interactive game, and it gives students a chance to test out like their fake spotting skills. And it's really cool because they get two chances, one at the beginning, just how they feel about it, and then it teaches them the skills to go through it. And after learning those skills, they get to immediately implement them to see if they are better at spotting them. And one thing I really like about this resource is that you can adjust it for the ages. So since I'm going to be doing a 9th grade lesson, that's typically 14, 15. So I'm going to go ahead and pick I am 14. I do it based on my location. I am not in a province. And so I'm going to go ahead and press other, and I press next. So like I said, here's 2 rounds. Round 1, instinct, you get the checks. Round 2, use the facts. So you can go ahead and play now. And I'm just gonna be like, I'm not sure. I think this might be true. And it'll tell me, yeah, you did. You got it right. Good guess. You can go next. And I think this is true. Yep. And you get the point. All right. After that, there's also a fake news self-assessment. So this is a very well-known Google Doc where they'll be given 5 social media posts, and you determine whether they're real, whether they're fake. And it's not just guessing, you have to give reasons why you believe that. So for example, this first one, it gives you an example of a social media post. You have to determine if it's legit or fake. How do you know? And then how confident are you on assessment ranked 1 through 5? So that's like a really good way to start there. And they get feedback immediately after. Right, we passed the media bias chart. Another tool is the SEER tool, which is a source educational evaluation rubric tool. And this is from Turnitin with, we're familiar mostly for plagiarism checks, but it has a really great interactive rubric to analyze the quality of internet sources. So right here, you can have a free download of it. So it does require, signing up a little bit, but it is free. So that's great. And it does help students kind of get a specific rubric to get those evaluation skills. We have another interactive game here called Scholarly or Not. So the primary purpose of this one is to determine whether it's a scholarly article or not. And so it kind of helps them differentiate between the types of sources and identify which sources are reliable enough to use in like their informative speech that they're using for current news. So this is the website right here. It's taking just a minute to load. But it will give criteria for what is a scholarly source right at the beginning. So for example, right here, it gives you a checklist. So you would be reading through it, like, okay, I see it, and you check through. Once all of them are checked, you press next, and then it gives you, okay, which 2 sources are scholarly? I believe it is these 2. I can go ahead and submit my answer, and I'm correct. And not only will it tell you if you are correct or incorrect, but it will give you reasoning behind it right away. So that's really good. There is the Wheel of Reason as the next resource for students I have here. So the Wheel of Reason is from the critical thinking community, and it helps for the students to relate critical thinking skills, mostly in their ability to analyze articles, essays, books, texts of any kind, and all of that here. What I would say is probably the best for this particular assignment would be like analyze the logic of an article, essay, or text. That way they're understanding like what is the message that is being done? Is this good enough for me to use in my informative speech? Analyzing the logic of the person who wrote it, the profession, subject, or disciple, and evaluate an author's reasoning. Like, why did this person write it? For what purpose? So remember, that goes back to the P in the CRAP test, as well as distinguishing inferences and assumptions. So they see like, oh, this is a logical reason, or no, this is not a logical reason, and there is some fallacy inside of it. So yeah, these are activities for the Wheel of Reason, which is where I would direct students to go to. We have Rate My Source as the next resource. So one really cool thing about this one is it really will rate your source. This is through the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. So if you have a title or a URL of the source you're evaluating, you can just copy and paste it into this search right here. And you can determine whether it's credible, whether it's scholarly, or if you want to determine whether it's both credible and scholarly. So that's great. And then once you put the link in, it's not as simple as just like, oh, yep, this is credible, this is not. It actually asks you a bunch of questions to kind of ascertain, okay, so like who wrote this? What was the publication date? And as you go through answering the questions, it will actually tell you things like, okay, well, if you don't know this information, odds are it's probably not credible because most credible resources will have that. So another great resource for them. And it will, instead of providing like a straight up rubric, it does have them kind of analyze, oh, I should be asking these questions as I'm going through to determine and rating a resource. And the last one I want to show is the smell test. So I've talked a little bit about the CRAP test, but another really great one is the smell test. It's an acronym. It stands for source, motivation, evidence, logic, and left out. And left out just meaning like what information has been left out. And that one is really great for separating fact from fiction, whereas the other one is determining like, is it reliable, accurate? Like I said before, it's an acronym. It has the introduction right here, and then it goes into more information for the student to read about, and we'll even have things like the pie chart of assessing source credibility. And yeah, and so those are all of the resources I have on this Padlet, and the reason that this is such an important concept for students to get is because there is a lot of information out there, and especially when they're going to be writing an informative speech, the main purpose of that is to inform. And the purpose, if the speech is not as accurate as possible, then it's going to be spreading mass misinformation. And that isn't great because then we can't determine what is true or is not true. So making sure that the sources we are using are actually credible is going to make sure that the speech we are giving is actually credible, and that establishes credibility and confidence in the students giving the speech, as well as knowing that they are fulfilling like the ethical use of not spreading misinformation if they can help it. And a lot of the resources I put up here are helpful a lot in specifically like news sources, which is going to be very important because it's not just any informative speech, it's an informative speech about a current event. And with that being said, thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you find this presentation helpful. Bye.